You are joining another session of Converge 2025. Thank you so much for being here. I hope the conference has been great for you so far. If you've been at other sessions, either this year or in previous years, you probably know that my name is Will with the RoboHead team. And if you've ever spoken with me for any length of time, you probably know that I care a lot about the review and approval process, the proofing process, and how RoboHead can help you as our clients in that process. So what we're going to do today is going to be talking about reviews and how you can, within your team, optimize that approval process. And we're really talking about how do you get faster approval? How do you get fewer revisions? Now, we know obviously that scoping the project is a way to do that. And so obviously, the more you can scope the project and have communication about the assets that are being created on the front end, the better. That goes without saying. We're not going to be focusing on that. We're going to be focusing on the actual review and approval process. So once we've gotten the scope, once we've built the assets, and now we're getting feedback on that. It could be at the ideation phase. It could be at the final sign-off phase before we launch a website or before we launch a new campaign or release a new product and go print all the packaging that we've produced for it. But regardless, we're going to be focusing on the review and approval process. And the reason is pretty simple. The review and approval process can be really hard and really challenging. Often that is where there's a lot of friction in the creative process. And why? There's a whole host of reasons why, but I'm going to really boil it down and focus on three areas today. One, there's lots of reviewers. So as I work with clients, I have clients that might have 3, 4, 10. I even have one client that has 50 reviewers often on a piece of collateral or an asset they're producing, whether that's web, digital, or print. Now, those 50 might not all be giving a final approval, but they're giving their feedback at some point from the ideation through the actual delivery or production of what that asset is. And so there's lots of reviewers, and these are busy people, often with different agendas, competing agendas. They're not aware of everyone's agenda, but it can be a bit of a challenge, particularly for a designer or a coordinator or a writer or someone that's supposed to make sense of all of this. You know this. This is what you live every day. So that's one reason the review and approval process can be hard. Another reason is that as we get all of that feedback from folks, we're making tons of revisions, and that leads to new versions. And sometimes people are not looking at the most recent version. Sometimes folks don't understand kind of why changes are being made. They're not privy to it. They don't care. They just don't know. And then also, I think another big piece is collaboration can cut both ways. So it's great to give visibility to folks. It's great to give folks the ability to kind of communicate with each other. This could be a reviewer talking to a designer, or this could be one reviewer talking with another reviewer. Legal has thoughts, and they want to share that with the brand or the product team. That can be really beneficial, but like I said, it cuts both ways. Sometimes those conversations don't need to be happening. They can actually go against the actual needs or the desires. They're not creating good collaboration and feedback. It's creating unnecessary friction and, frankly, unnecessary confusion that you all within the creative team, the marketing team, have to deal with. So review and approval process is hard for a lot of other reasons, but those are just three major ones that we're going to be looking at trying to deal with today. And so how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to look at how we can streamline the review process in RoboHead. Like I said, obviously, the better you can scope a project, the better you can set expectations. All of that's great, but we're going to focus on the review and approval process. We've created something, whether it's an idea and just kind of an initial concept, or it's a final piece of artwork that or packaging that we're going to go print, or a website, a landing page that we're going to deploy, or an email campaign that we're going to start. We're going to focus on how we can streamline those reviews. And as we look at streamlining the reviews, we're going to first look at how we can use stages and automation to help us do that. So take a little bit of the lift off of the creative or off of the marketing team. And then we're also going to talk about how we can set expectations for all of those stakeholders and give them the visibility they need. And sometimes that also may mean protecting them from visibility that they don't need, not letting them get wrapped around the axle on stuff that doesn't matter. And then this whole kind of wraps up to how do you empower your reviewers? How do you give them what they need when they need it, and then give them the tools they need to be able to give you what you need, which is their feedback or their sign-off ultimately. So that's going to be our focus today. And I think the best thing that we can do now, once we've talked about that and kind of level set, is just jump into the product. So let's jump in and take a look at it. So the first thing with streamlining reviews that we're going to take a look at is how we can use stages within RoboHead and automation within and around those stages to really streamline the review process and make it so that your designers or your writers or your coordinators or your editors or your photogs aren't playing traffic cop, but are getting the feedback, making the changes, and doing the design or the creative work that we want them to be focused on. So with that, we're going to jump into a review, and you can see here, I think a lot of people don't really realize this. We have the ability to actually not just share a file with multiple people, we can share it with folks in various stages. So as we look at this review, I'm going to scroll down and we'll see kind of the stage information. We're not just sending it to everyone all at once. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to send it to marketing. And then once marketing has approved it, we're going to go ahead and send it on to the product team. And then once the product team says, hey, it looks right, we're using the language, we're describing the product, we're representing the product properly, then we're going to send it on to our partners. So for example, maybe those are internal partners like sales, the executive office, the PMO, the factory, the retail team, or maybe it's even external partners like we're using Marvel IP, let's say, in a product. And so we need to communicate with the folks at Disney that manage that IP relationship that we have with them. And then finally, we're going to go through legal and compliance, and then we're going to get final approval. I think this is really important about sending things to the right folks at the right time. Maybe your process is not this complex. Maybe you want everyone in the review all at once. That's great. That's perfect. But for some of you, you might want to handle stuff up front, and you can do that in RoboHead. You don't have to take that into Slack or Teams or email or Acrobat. Just do it all in RoboHead. And so that's what we're going to do here. We're going to bring folks in at the stages and at the time where we really want them to be brought in. We want to make sure we've already got the copy ironed out, or we want to make sure that everyone on our team is happy with it before we go out to the larger business. So again, kind of within these stages, it's really helpful because I can see all of the folks that have been assigned to a stage. I can see if they've made a decision. We've got dates and timestamps on all that stuff. And then ultimately, if there's still things that are going out further into the future, I'm able to see that as well. And within those stages, if you go ahead and modify the review, what you'll see is we've actually added in automation as well. So we've said, hey, it's going to move on to the product team when everyone has approved the previous stage, that team review. Or maybe we say, you know what, it's going to move to the partners once only a single person has approved or approved with changes. So we're able to automate this. So again, that your designers, your creatives are not playing traffic cop moving things around. So if everyone says, hey, this looks good, move it on to the next group of folks and let the system do that and carry that water. That's around the automation. The other piece that we're doing here is I mentioned the fact that what we really wanted to do was give folks the right visibility. So we're not just bringing them in at the right time, but we're setting expectations for what we want them to do. So we have the ability to do that within the stages as well, and within just a normal review if you're not using stages. I could say, hey, you know what? I want, if someone makes a comment, I reply to that comment, or another reviewer replies to that comment, I want that person to receive a notification and be aware. We can say, hey, I want my designers to get notified every time someone adds an annotation. I don't think we want that. That's a little bit extreme, so I'll turn that off. We also have the ability to say, you know what, I I don't want my sales team to get super excited and download something before it's been approved and share it or print it. And so I could say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to let them download the original item until we've actually identified that, hey, this thing's good to go and we can move it out. Another thing that I think can be super helpful is, let's say maybe you don't have multiple stages, you're bringing everyone in all at once, or maybe within a stage you have several stakeholders, and you want them to provide feedback to the designer or the writer or the creative, but you don't really want them discussing this among themselves. You could say, hey, you know what? I don't want contact users, those folks that are only reviewing, to be able to see all of the markups and annotations. This is kind of like we're voting at the same time, but we're not going to be discussing the candidates. The time for that is past, or we don't want you guys arguing with each other. I don't really care about this. I have a client that I've worked with for years where they are a sports league, and they bring in all the clubs or the teams that may be part of an asset, and they don't want the teams talking amongst each other about the asset. They just want them looking at, how is their team represented? Do they approve of that? So we have the ability to do that. And then again, when we think of like a visibility standpoint, sometimes folks want a little extra weight, or maybe for an audit purpose, they want not just the approval saved, but they want folks to actually digitally sign and place their signature on the proof somewhere. Maybe it's in a slug for a piece of packaging, for example. But again, that gives kind of visibility and awareness, helps people see who's made what decisions, or helps them kind of say, you know what, I'm responsible for this. So as we look at kind of the review, again, the stages are really important, bringing the right folks at the right time and then moving on to the next folks. The automation is very important. Move it on automatically if we don't need to engage, so that way we're not wasting our creatives' time doing non-creative things, right? And then giving folks the right visibility. Not everyone always needs to see everything that's going on. So this is super critical. And then finally, I think the other piece that can be super helpful is making sure that folks are empowered to make the right decisions. And so with that, I actually want to jump into the review and show you a few things around the markup that we've actually added recently. Some of it's been around for a while, but some of it's relatively new. And I think that this can be important because, again, it empowers your team, gives them all the tools, gives your stakeholders all the tools that they need in order to be able to provide you the feedback and ultimately the approval that you want. So if we open up this proof, a couple things I just want to call out that I think are really valuable. These are great tools. So within RoboHead, there's these tremendous tools that are available to folks. I think, one of the first ones is simply like the ability to check links. So for example, if there's a link in here, folks don't always realize that they could actually check a link within a web page or a PDF that we're proofing. So here you can see that there is a link in the document, and I can hover over it and I can see the URL. So maybe this is a hyperlink, not kind of calling it out like we see here. And then you can also click on that link. So your reviewers should know that if they're checking for links, they can actually hover over and see the website that the link is going to, and they can even click on that link. Again, makes it really easy for them. They don't have to ask you questions. They don't have to download the document or do something outside of RoboHead. Another thing that can be super helpful is that whenever you highlight or use one of the text tools, I can actually come in here and maybe I've highlighted a block of text that I'm going to edit. You can copy the text that's been selected and paste it into the comment or paste it into another document or tool that you're using. And then another thing that is relatively new that I don't think everyone realizes is I can actually check out the font. So maybe I've got my screen resolution dialed up or it's not great and a font looks off to me. I don't have to place a markup and ask someone, hey, what do you think of that? Is this the right font? I don't have to download the PDF and check it in Acrobat. I can actually just click the View Font Info icon and it will show me that, hey, this is Myriad Pro regular 10-point font. So if in body text I'm using Roboto Light 12-point font, I can quickly see that, hey, we're not adhering to our brand standards. Or if we are, then I can see that as well. And again, I don't have to, I have all the tools that I need in order to make a decision. Another simple example is if you're looking at like a printer proof and you want to see, hey, we only send 4 color documents to the printer. It's CMYK. We're not doing any Pantone colors. I could actually check the ink colors here and see what separations or what colors are in this document. So, yep, this is a 4 color. Good to go. Again, I don't have to download it in an Acrobat and see if there's a Pantone color that accidentally snuck in there or got left in a document. So again, just empowering the reviewers to be able to use the tools they have available to them. There's also a measurement tool where I can go ahead, this is not a great example, but if this was a piece of packaging, for example, I could actually come in and measure and get inches, centimeters, millimeters, pixels even, to like the thousandth of an inch. So I can check and make sure that the size, the box is the right size or this image is the right size. So again, just kind of letting clients, letting your stakeholders be empowered to make decisions. And then the final thing that I'll show you that you may not be aware of is we have this version compare. And so I can come in and I can compare 2 versions of a document side by side. And if I do that, that's super helpful because I can see them and I can see the changes that have been made. But let's just say maybe I don't know what changes have been made. We have this super helpful highlight changes function that does a pixel by pixel analysis of the 2 versions and will actually show me here highlighted, hey, we added not just a graphic between version 1 and version 2, but we also added a block of text. So I hope this is super helpful to you all. Again, kind of the idea here is you can use the stages and the automation to streamline the review process. You can set expectations and give the right level of visibility to your stakeholders, and then ultimately empower your reviewers, make sure they understand all the powerful tools within RoboHead to be able to review the content, the design, and other things about those documents and give you that feedback and approval that you need. I hope this session has been super helpful. If it has not, and you love talking about reviews and want to talk some more, here's my contact information, or you can reach out to our support team. Thanks again for attending this Converge session. Stay tuned for future sessions, and can't wait to hear your feedback. Thanks again.